Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Barely Conscious and Streaming. I am so glad you are joining Monica Beshay, Sean Devine, and myself again tonight. And tonight we're going to be talking about finessing the market. And, I'm just going to pass the baton to Sean and then to Monica for them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their background. And then we're just going to dig in like we've been doing the last few weeks. Sean?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Aubria, again for the invitation. I'm excited to be a part of this. So I graduated from Brooklyn Law School in 2008, which is a really unique time to graduate from probably any program, but certainly from law school. Practiced for about 5 years after law school, and now for the last 12-ish years have been working as a real estate broker. And it's interesting to now have gone through 2 cycles of ups and downs through that relatively short. I tell myself it's short, but it's actually been some time now. It'll be 20 years soon. So,
don't say that. Monica, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica. I graduated also from Brooklyn Law School during the pandemic, so also an interesting time period. I'm currently working for the New Jersey Department of Health, and prior to that, I was working for Goldman Sachs, with the stock market. So I've seen a lot of ups and downs.
And guys, you know me, I'm Aubria Ralph. Scrappy Go Project is my company. We do leadership consulting and development. But if you've spent any time on my page, I am a debt finance attorney by trade, graduated law school in 2019. I actually started my legal career in the middle of the pandemic. And so that was, although I had a job, there was a lot of fear, a lot of stress attached to it because there was so much uncertainty during that time. And so, our goal today is not to kind of come here and act like we know everything, because we obviously don't. It's more about sharing our experiences and kind of how we handled the shifting market as we were going through our own transitions into just living our lives and building the lives that we planned, right? And I actually graduated undergrad in 2008, but I had been working. Yeah, I had been working 5 years. I was a manager in retail for 5 years at that point. And for me, what was interesting was being on the side of hiring. Being the person kind of representing employers. And I have to say, what was really crazy to me during that time was how many people were graduating with law degrees, MBAs, and other graduate degrees, and couldn't find a job in their fields after making that investment in time and money. And even being the person in an interview, talking to somebody, could you imagine, I'm thinking about going to law school fall of 2009, and I'm interviewing somebody for a part-time job in 2008. Fall 2008. Because
did you hear the question? I feel like I used to hear this, ride the wave, go to law school during those hard times. And how did you feel about that?
Yeah, and it's so crazy that you asked that question. And maybe you heard that too, Sean. And you can talk about what did you hear people tell you, oh, it's gonna be okay, just roll with the punches. I don't know, I feel like I hear advice like that. I actually got into a fight with somebody earlier about that kind of advice. So
I think it's an interesting concept. I wish I had the option. They wouldn't let me keep going. Though maybe they would have. I'm sure they would have taken the money if I would have just said I'm going to do another 3 years.
It's so funny that it's so funny, right? I mean, I think a lot of people. Hold on a second. I don't know what's going on tonight. Guys, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so give us 1 second so we can sort it out. This is our second technical difficulty situation. So Monica, if you want to fix your screen. And I'm going to shut off my landline because I still have a landline. Hold
You
on a
need one.
second.
If you watch The Matrix, you know you need a landline. You can't let go of it.
No, that is like, I feel like that's such a good segue, right? Didn't like the second Matrix come out during that time too? I feel like we got our like second. I feel like the second Matrix came out like around like 2008, 2009.
Yeah, maybe it's possible.
No, it's like really crazy when, to kind of answer Monica's question, that was something, I feel like that's something I've heard a lot. And I've also heard it, especially in like the Christian community, that's something you always kind of hear, like, oh, it's not God's timing, like, it's all going to work out and it's the perfect timing. And so like a question I asked today, and I feel like I've been kind of pushing the envelope a lot with religion since I was very young, is just asking the question, because I feel like I don't like the idea of blind faith. And I don't think, I don't believe that the God that I serve wants me to serve him blindly. Like he wants me to actually be rational in my decision making. Sure. It's a decision to believe, right? And so I remember I was talking to a family member this morning about something, and they were kind of like, oh, but in God's timing. And I was like, I've been hearing that a lot my whole life. And I feel like if God is the kind of God who and he might strike me in this live, so if I go black, what happened. But I was like, if God is who he says he is in the Bible, if he says he's more than enough, right, and like he can give you exceedingly abundantly above everything you can ever ask or think, like these are actually words in the Bible, that these are promises, right?
I went to a Catholic college, but I am not as familiar with the.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm sure you heard that, right? You heard like this kind of faith-based.
Oh well, 100%. And I have lots of family and friends who are very, and not to say I'm not. I think of myself more spiritual than religious. But
and this is not a religious thing. Like we're not trying to convert you guys. If you're watching, this was just like my rationale, using.
But I think the concept. I really like, so not to bring God into it necessarily, but I think as a concept, it's there that just going back to like 2008 versus now versus versus COVID. In 2008. I didn't have the same kind of tools that I have now. So when things happened, the only thing I could think of as somebody who grew up in a blue collar family, you just get any job you can. You do that job to the best of your ability. You work yourself to the bone, and you kind of you hope it works out. And I think one of the things I'm grateful for is that by the time we got to COVID and the world shuts down, and I'm doing an all commission job, that is actually illegal. We're not legally allowed to show property starting in March of 2020. Rather than thinking of it more faith-based or hoping it'll work out, it was more, it will work out. What's the path?
Right.
So it's like, it's not necessarily that it'll be shown to you, but it does exist. And I think it's easier for me to see that in real estate because there's always people doing exceptionally well in any environment. And now I've been through lots of environments, and I'm also a very competitive person, and I am also trying to be pretty self-aware. And I see people and I know like even in difficult times, they're doing really well. And it's not because it's easy for them necessarily. It's because they find the path. It's always been helpful for me to say, okay, well, so other people are doing really well. so I know I can do it if they can do it. So how? And just having that faith, knowing that it can work, lets you then devise the path rather than hoping it'll work and kind of waiting, as sometimes I think can be I don't want to call them mistakes, but you see people sitting and waiting for years, and it's like
for nothing to happen because they haven't haven't done the work, right? And so, and I think that's kind of where I'm going and where I was going to.
It
Monica?
reminds me of
sorry, go ahead.
Just that, and this is I think this is in religious circles you might have heard this many times, but somebody's in a storm, there's a flood coming, he's on the roof, he's, there's a raft that comes by, offers him help, he says no thank you, God is going to save me. There's somebody who passes in a helicopter, throws down a ladder, he says no thank you, God's going to save me. Along the way a few different people come, he dies, he goes to heaven, and he says, what happened? You're supposed to protect me, I'm a believer. And God says, I sent a raft and I sent a helicopter, and you let it go. And I think in its own way, that's true. There's not always. We're blessed to be in a world where there are options. There are people in the world who don't really have the same kinds of options. But for us, I think there's usually a way to make it work.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Monica, you were chiming in a little bit there. Did you have something to add?
Yeah. No, I think it was really echoing. I don't want to belabor the point, but just choosing to take action, I think. Is really important.
And I mean,
and being okay with making mistakes.
No, and that's actually biblical. Like it literally says, faith without work is dead. Right. And so that's like an actual verse in the Bible. And for me, so this idea of like blind faith, like I don't know where it happened, like where it kind of seeped into Christianity, right? But this happened. And so, I really love like what you talked about though, Sean, this idea that like if somebody else is doing it, then I can do it too. Right. And I love that
thought, right?
Yeah.
Because it says that if you're not doing it, you have to take ownership for it. And that's scary.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, yeah, maybe self-violence, right?
Maybe not violent. Violent is
No, but I think in a way, right, it kind of forces you. It's almost like you're smacking yourself in the face or like hitting your head on a wall and saying like, bro, like, what are you not like? Why aren't you doing what you need to do to achieve the thing that you said you want to achieve? And I think that's ultimately what it is, right? So it's not a matter of, I need to do it exactly the way that this other person is doing. But I love the healthy mentality of if Bob is doing it, then maybe I can do it too, right? And so it even gets you to me, like it starts with a belief, right? And like if I really believe that I can do it, now maybe I call Bob and I say, hey Bob, like I don't know, do you have time for like a 5-minute chat? Because I want to know, how are you doing what you're doing? And you go straight to the source, right?
And he's human. Bob's your peer. He's not your superior. He's the same as you fundamentally. So how do you find your success? And it is unique. I mean, you're not Bob, so you don't need Bob's success. You need your success.
Exactly.
So talking with these different people can help.
Yeah, and finding out like what their blueprint was, right? And I think a lot of times so many people get caught up in taking the exact step to getting to a destination and less about, okay, what tools am I using? And so I'm going to pull from something else that you said, because I think it's so relevant based on what's happening right now, about take whatever job I can get so I can stay afloat, but still, and you didn't quite say it, but I know that that's what you were thinking, like, but still be working toward the thing that I was thinking of doing anyway, and building the tools and building yourself up. So by the time you got to 2020, you're like, okay, I'm a professional at crashes happening in the middle of my parade. And kind of being able to kind of flip and do what needs to be done, right?
Yeah, and I think to check in with yourself about your goals regularly, right? I mean, I think you can't, if I would have been too strict about my goals, I would never have achieved anything. I would have been continued, I honestly, I thank God that I was fired, because I would never have stopped. I would have died working those 80, 90-hour weeks, trying to figure out a way to make it work. And it wasn't really my responsibility. It wasn't my law firm. It wasn't working for anybody, honestly.
For any law firm workers out there right now, you could tell Sean was a little revolutionary, while he was at the firm, but that's a really valid point, right? If I'm going to be investing 80 to 90 hours of my life every week, right, for an extended amount of time, okay? And let's say maybe, I'm going to try to do like math in my head really quickly, but that's like a lot of hours. It's like 4,000 hours. Like if you do 50, just do 50 times 80 hours. You get a 2 week, let's say you get 2 weeks vacation, 4,000 hours out of your year. And it's not for you.
I think part of it is that, again, it wasn't, success isn't owed to anyone, right? I mean, it's not like if you do everything you're told, and so you're then rewarded with success. I think so many of the friends that I have who've been really successful in law, whether they become partner or move on to other things, it's not because they just blindly did what they were told to do. It's because they were pretty thoughtful about the work they did and the people they worked with and the mentors they found and
intentionality,
their path to success. And so for me, I think that it was really important for me to learn to believe in myself, that I didn't need someone to give me success. I had to find my path to success. Because nobody was trying to give it to me.
No, and that makes sense. And like, what's really awesome about your story is you got to take control of your time in a way that like most people don't have the ability to do that and still be thriving, right? I think a lot of people, they get control of their time, but then like there's like the money cut, right? So it's like, okay, I have control of my time, but I don't have as much financial freedom anymore because like the path I may have chosen isn't lucrative enough to fund the kind of life that I want, right? And so it just kind of goes back to the level of success, right? And of course, like we're not saying that like, it has to be like perfect when you kind of have to finesse. Like that's the thing about finessing, right? Like you kind of figure it out as you go, you put in the effort, and then the work starts to give you reward. Like that's just how it works, like it's kind of like you've all heard like no risk, no reward, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I think finding something that brings you joy and fulfillment, I remember the very beginning working in real estate, my gut reaction was, I really love this. I hope I could find a way to survive doing it. And surviving was really hard in the beginning. I mean, I think, I don't remember the exact number, but I made like somewhere in the $20,000 range for the first year. And that, that's not enough to cover my student loans at that point. My student loans were 35 grand a year, 40 grand a year. I mean, it's insane. But just that excitement, that love, and it's funny to me how it's like you shoot for the moon, you hit a star. It's a little bit backwards, but like just figuring out the path to survival created the engine of like so much more success than I would have even imagined, honestly, because it's once you figure it out, it really just works versus when you're in a certain kind of like, if you're working for someone else, you're hoping that they'll give you a raise. You ask them every year, will you please give me more money? Having your own business, the nice thing is you kind of
You
it's not
decide
necessarily
if
that easy, but you
know.
could make more. It's just figuring out how.
Yeah. Like do I want to go to higher value properties? Do I want to
Sure.
focus on a specific area for somebody in real estate, right? For somebody in law, like do I want to do like contingency type work in addition to hourly work, so I can kind of like get a range of clientele and kind of diversify where my money is coming from,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, it's like an investment.
Yeah, do I want to like be a part-time professor at my at like my alma mater because they're giving me that opportunity to do it, right? Because like these are all opportunities, right? That you can just have based on the relationships that you're making. And so, Monica, like talk about when you like, because yes, you had a job, but like talk about some of like the feelings you were having, even though you had something kind of lined up in 2020, as somebody who kind of like you like expressed your way through undergrad. What was it, like 3.5 years? And then you expressed your
Yeah,
way
3 years.
through law school. So
Yeah.
Monica basically finished her law, got to be a lawyer in 5.5 years. So she's,
Wow. That's awesome.
so talk about,
Yeah.
think about it, like, so this is somebody who like put the work in, right? And now like here comes 2020 and the universe is like, hey girl, oh, you wanted to get here
Yeah.
fast,
So it
right?
was interesting.
So
Those
tell
5
us.
years were definitely no break. So I think that's part of it. Like COVID was like, despite all the, the tragedies and everything that going on, for me, it was like, quote unquote, a weird break, a forced one. Like I had to stop. But I do think I had that peace of mind knowing that I did have a job, but I think I was worried about the market afterwards because I knew there's going to be an influx. Because one, not only the people that got delayed from the jobs the previous year were going to be looking where they're going to be increasing competition, and the market I knew was going to be different. I didn't know what that was going to look like. But I knew there was definitely going to be, it was likely to be challenging, to be honest. So yeah, so that's something I definitely had in mind. I made sure, like during my time when I was clerking, to network as much as I could. But again, that was a whole different environment because this was the first time, the courts were on Zoom most of the time, or only limited attorneys were in the office, in the courthouse. So everything was different, and it was very much a learning experience. And luckily for me, during law school, I had actually interned at the IRS, and they had done pre-COVID the first international case on Zoom. And that was the first of its kind. And then little did we know, unfortunately, a little bit later, like the next year, COVID, it happened. And then all courts nowadays still use Zoom, and that's just like standard practice. So I think I was lucky to have like seen a little bit of that prior to clerking and having that experience firsthand. So that was helpful for me. But definitely was a very, I guess, uncertain time, and it's stressful in that sense. Like when you don't know what you're going to be doing next, it's not a great feeling.
No, it really isn't. And I remember for me, like I actually taught my final semester as an English professor in spring of 2020.
Yeah.
And so I submitted grades May 31st of 2020. And I started as a debt finance attorney June 8th of 2020. So like my transition period was, it's kind of quick.
When did you take the bar? I think I know you've told me before, but when did you take the bar?
Yeah. So so I actually took the bar in February and was like dying of COVID during that time. Missed it by 6 points. I was only able to work in like, I think like Oklahoma. I wrote a post about this, but like I was able to work anywhere but New York, basically. But my job was
Can you
in New
get
York.
points for taking it with COVID? You should get like 7 points for taking it with COVID.
The problem is I didn't realize I had COVID until like 6 weeks later when they told us what COVID was.
Gosh. Yeah, if you're taking it in February.
Yeah, no, it's
Right
like
before.
it's really funny when I think about like 2020 for me was like the Wild West because I was like being like Professor Ralph, but also like kind of law student Aubria, and then like kind of a lawyer, at a big law firm, um,
A
and
lot of
and
hats
at
to
and
juggle.
at some point like taking a break to take the bar again. So I ended up taking the bar in October of 2020 again, and it was all online. And so I ended up taking it from like my home office in Brooklyn. Which like looking back, I'm like, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. I didn't have to worry about anybody like sneezing in my face. Like
Muting,
nothing, like
the
weird
coughing.
tapping. People do all kinds of stuff while they're taking exams because they're nervous, right? And so like it was like for me it was like the perfect conditions the second time around
Mhm,
because complete quiet, right?
I agree.
But Monica, like what you touched on was like that break, right?
Yeah.
And like I don't know, Sean, you seem like the type of person who was like on a mad dash, when you were in your groove for real estate, like you were like trying to show as many houses as possible before COVID. And then as soon as and so it was like having to shift, like I don't know, like maybe I'm misrepresenting you, but I just get the feeling that like, you were you were
I
busy.
think I was definitely busy. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the blessing there is, as a real estate agent and probably at least certain types of business owners,
Mm-hmm.
your job is to be busy. So your job is to
Mm-hmm.
find a way.
Yeah.
I think you talked or you alluded to this concept.
Yeah.
As a business owner, you have a blank page every day. You decide what to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So your real job is to figure out, how do you fill that up, and how do you fill it up in a successful way.
Yeah.
So, as we're able to do fewer and fewer things, I just was racking my brain, like, what can I do that's productive right now? And
Mm-hmm.
some of
Mm-hmm.
that, I think it catapulted me with social media. Using social media as a way to reach people
Mm-hmm.
became, it was already such a big part of my business. I was really lucky that was the case, and I just really leaned into it because I could do that from home.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and I also, it really, that pause was a blessing too, to take a second and like redefine my relationship with
Mhm.
finances. I had been
Mm-hmm.
doing well enough at that point to pay my bills, to save some money,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really doing anything with any of it. I didn't really have a plan for my personal finances. So I finally had time to listen to some personal finance books. And I actually, for the first time at 38 years old, opened like a 401k and started funding it. And
Mm-hmm.
it probably changed my life in some ways. And also, so the two books that I wanted to talk about, because I listened
Yeah.
to them
Yeah.
during this pause. One is, it's called The
Okay.
Millionaire Next Door, and super data. Everything's very data oriented for me, but like, and I think that the really
I'm
important thing
writing
I
it
take
down.
from that is, it talks about, like, what have you read it too?
No, I'm writing it
Did you say?
down.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
great.
Million
Yeah, no,
Next
it's
Door.
awesome.
Writing it
Yeah.
down.
No, it's a good book. Like no.
Have you listened to it or read it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
No.
awesome.
It like
I
to
love.
me, it's like, and like I feel like I know you're saying it's dated, but can I just like can I just like plug for the dated books? Those people knew what they were talking about.
Oh no, I was saying
Yeah.
data driven, like a very
Yeah.
data
Yeah.
specific.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it might also be old, but
Yeah.
just
Like
that
a
it was
lot of
very
book.
number
Yeah.
specific.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Mm-hmm.
like, so the equation that I loved from that book was, people think about wealthy as a really simple concept of like, how much money do you earn and how much money do you have in the bank? But I think the really important thing that you feel but you don't think about it as much is how much do you spend? So what are your expenses?
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
you make $100,000 a year, but your yearly expenses are 10,000, you're doing pretty well. You in any given year, you're making 10 years
Mm-hmm.
worth
Mm-hmm.
of money. You can make
Yeah.
$1,000,000, and if you're spending $1,000,000 a year, you're poor. And that concept
Facts.
was really important. And it changes, because I do think it's a little bit
Thank
dangerous, and I see this with lots of clients who are super wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of numbers you can hit
Mm-hmm.
where you don't have to worry about money anymore, where you could just spend freely. I mean, you can easily make $5 million a year and really struggle to save money, to feel secure. So
And it
that was
really depends on like lifestyle and pattern, right? Like what do you, like you said, like what are you keeping, right? Like it's funny, like I always like use my mom's savings when I like do any kind of like financial literacy type things. I always like talk about her because like between her, like, and I was just like the kid helping her keep organized. So like I wasn't bringing any money for the pot, to be very clear. I was just there making sure things got paid on time, the money went where it was supposed to go, as like, you know, a 13, 14-year-old. But like as
That's
an
awesome.
LPN, like she wasn't making a lot of money, but she managed to save like close to 200K in like a couple of years, just
Oh, wow.
by just by like being frugal, like, you know, like deciding like, oh, and you know, like recently I said at like a talk that delayed gratification is my superpower. And I credit her to that because like there were things where I got to the point where I was like, oh, you know what, I do not need those pair of Jinko jeans. And Sean might know what those are. I don't know if Monica
Yeah.
knows what those
Yeah.
are.
I don't think I
But
had any, but I definitely knew what they were. Yeah.
you know, but like, so I wasn't allowed to get bell bottoms because my mom hated that in like 7th to 8th grade. She hated that I wanted to look like the other girls. So like, she actually forced me to wear. I was wearing skinny jeans like 2 years before they became popular, and like felt like a tortured child in school because she made me kind of wear a uniform in like 7th and 8th grade, and it was to kind of break that. I know you're in America now, but you don't have to like become an American, right? So it was kind of like making me stay true to my values. And then like I remember when I like wanted these like she like finally allowed me to like break from that. And so like I would get Jingo jeans because I love the baggy. I just like baggy clothes ultimately. And so I remember like it got to a point where I had like 3 or 4 pairs of them, and we would like go to the store and she'd be like, oh, do you want to pick up another pair of jeans? And those jeans, like, I remember they were not cheap. They were like probably like $70 or $80 in like 1999. Okay, so pretty pricey. And I got to the point where I'd be like, oh, you know what, mom, I don't really need those, because I would be thinking about the larger gift that I was going to ask her for in a few months. And I knew my chances of getting the larger gift later would be better if she had been saving the money the whole time, you know. So it's like, and so it became like a game for me. But like because of that, I traded Jinko jeans for going away to Europe, you know, and like doing really, or being able to go to like multiple camps in the summer. Like I could go to soccer camp and field hockey camp in the same summer because, you know, and so like it was like, it's funny because in the beginning you're kind of, as a kid, you're like, what's your problem, like you have money, mom. But like after a while it just kind of makes sense to me as somebody who is now a part of the financial decisions in the house, like, oh no, we need to save that money for this other thing.
The great gift that she gave you, you know, to learn
Yeah.
that from such a young
And
age.
even with working.
Great.
Monica,
Yeah.
what did you say?
No, I was saying even with working,
Mm-hmm.
the same concept.
Yeah,
Like, where are
no,
you spending your
and that's the
time? Where are you
thing.
spending your money? Like, okay, yeah, you're working,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if I'm spending all
getting time
these
to spend.
hours working, like how
You don't.
am I spending my time working on
I'm not.
substantive?
I know.
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit,
Yeah, I think
Monica.
Hello.
You cut out a little bit. What were you saying? What were you saying?
Oh,
You were saying
apologies.
something about working. Yeah, go ahead. You just cut out, like your
Okay.
service was
Oh, I don't know what's going on today. Um, yeah, the same thing with working. I guess even like when you're working so much on like where are you spending your time? Whether like earlier you guys were talking about like, spending all the time working for someone, or even if you're working for yourself, the fruits of your labor. And how are you using that? Are you just saving, 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 or saving towards a goal and having that, well-rounded approach,
Mhm.
I think is helpful because
Yeah.
you don't want to burn out, you don't want to resent whatever you're doing because at the end of the day you chose it for a
Mhm.
reason. So that love, I think, is still important, and I think
Mhm.
that's what gets you going, whether your love for the jeans or your love for the job. Um,
No, I think that's right. I mean, that was something I will say when I worked in Big Law. I literally, I think I was probably the only person who was truly prepared when they showed up to a big law firm. And I know that's like a tall order for me to kind of like put out there into the universe. But when I found out about big law, I remember like my rationale in that elevator one night on my way to property when my arch nemesis told me about big law. And then I went and checked it out for myself and was like, wait, they're paying you what? And for what? Like, why didn't anybody tell me about this? So like, and so like that was something where I was like, oh, it was a no-brainer for me that I needed to get one of those jobs. And like some people are like, oh, but you're gonna like spend your whole life working. But like I literally went into it with, okay, I'm gonna work really hard my first like 4 to 5 years of big law, and I'm gonna learn everything I could possibly learn. And as I get really good at things, I'm gonna come up with efficient ways of doing things. Now, here's the kicker with big law is you get efficient. That's like the recipe for more work.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
you finished those documents? Oh, we can add you to like three more deals if you could do that many, right? But and at first it was kind of I remember it was kind of daunting until somebody actually articulated that to me. Like the reward for efficiency is more work. But it was feeding my ultimate goal, which was I want to learn as much as I can. And so like that's something I want to kind of impart on people who are even going into the job market now. Like you need to have a
yeah,
goal that's bigger than your job,
Mhm.
whatever you're doing. Like it can't be about
Mm.
the work itself. It has to be bigger. And so for me it was I just got in my
I
head
think
I
as
wanted to be a
lawyers, you're
smart
learning a
lawyer.
skill. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so for me it was like
I think
I
that
want to
skill
get
set you're
so good.
refining it.
Exactly, exactly. Like I want to get so good that like people just want me on their teams, right? Because for me it was kind of like and maybe that was my god complex. Like I'm going to become like the god of whatever practice I'm in. Like totally like grandiose, but whatever you need to like keep you grounded in what you're doing, that's going to like get you through the nights. And
Mhm.
ultimately the idea of balance is like I used to treat like even during the pandemic, I think I bought something like 20 pairs of foam posits, and these are like fancy basketball sneakers, um
Mhm.
and I don't play
Mm.
basketball, and I don't think either of you have seen me in sneakers, so you're probably like, that's weird. Um, but I'm like I'm a sneakerhead. I'm like a secret like sneakerhead. But
Did you
I'm
just
not
like
like
store them? Are you a collector?
yeah, so I collect them. Like sometimes I wear them. Like sometimes you might catch
It's
me
sort of
out in the streets
Ah,
in them, right? In fact, like I posted a photo on LinkedIn recently, and a friend like texted me and was like, "You own foam posits?" Because they'd known me for like 6 years and they'd never seen me in a pair, which is possible. But like I gave myself these little treats because going back to how much money you keep, you know working in big law, it was the first time that I was making like $250,000 my first year, you
mhm.
know? And before that, I think the most I ever made was maybe 100K. But it was like I don't think I ever made that at one job without a bonus attached to it, right? And so
Mhm.
like for me, it was kind of like you've never
Yeah.
seen this money before in your life. You need a financial planner. Like
Mm,
even if I
mhm,
thought I was
mhm,
good at with
Yeah.
money, I was like, and I remember I called my financial planner that I ended up working with the first couple of years. I called him like 3 weeks before I started. I was like, hey, remember we had talked? This money is about to start dropping in my account. Like, I need your help. And I was able to like clear debts and like just save
I
money.
think the concept of preparing though.
Yeah. And I think it's
Mhm.
so important. Like,
Like you were preparing, and I think that's important.
no, and that's something like everybody needs to be doing right now, because like if we're not prepared, like if you can't be
Mhm.
scrambling through like the way that it's set up right now, you don't want to be the person who didn't have even like a little rinky dink plan on a napkin somewhere. Like you need something to kind of like be like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. It doesn't have to be super complicated. I know like some people really like charts and graphs and all of that, but for me it's like just have a simple list. like like if you're not the type of
Yeah.
person who is like we're obviously disciplined people on this call, like, and like we've made like really good decisions based on like mentorship and all the things that we've had to get us here. But like if you're like the type of person where you're like, oh, this sounds really good, but you're like, where do I even start?
mm.
You just need like 5 things on a list you want to get done. Like, and don't make it super
And I think
complicated,
reading, like reading or podcasts or
hmm
things
And that could be on your
like that,
list.
like Sean was mentioning a book, like here, like, yeah, yeah.
No,
I
I think
personally
it's
didn't
so
know a lot of
important.
finance before I entered Goldman. hmm
Mm.
And I used
Mhm.
that time to like meet
And
with really smart, world moneymakers, and that was helpful to help my own financial literacy, and then also understand the business aspect and understand a lot more than maybe I wouldn't have. And I wanted to, again, I knew that time period was going to be limited, but because I knew I wanted to switch careers afterwards, but I knew I want to take advantage of learning finances and everything, and simply preparing yourself is essential.
mhm. So
Yeah.
Sean, you look like you were gonna say something before.
No,
So I went
I
in and out.
completely agree. I think that the challenging financial times are when we really tighten things up and get stronger
Mhm.
financially, and it like
Yeah.
again, you build this engine that
Mhm.
will carry you through that time, but it can, if you set it up right, really
Yeah.
catapult you once things loosen up again and once things get kind of better. So it's
Yeah.
really an opportunity to kind of really strengthen things. And
No.
the other book that I read during this time or
Yeah,
listened
yeah,
to
yeah.
was called The
Yeah.
Simple Path to Wealth.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that before.
I haven't read that one yet. I'm gonna add that one to my thing.
It was
So
great.
like I forget what's that book? It's like a Dave Ramsey book. So I actually did like a Dave
Oh,
Ramsey course because
Uh-huh.
like years ago my church was doing it with like married couples, and you guys know I'm not married, but they made an exception for me to come because I was like, and my argument for being able to go was, listen, like I got one income, so I really need to know how to manage money. And they were like, oh my God, you could come, like out of pity.
Yeah,
But
why
it was uh,
you
but
can
it
only
was
have a
like,
financial plan if you're married.
well, no, I don't even think it was that. Like, it was like the marriage ministry that was like putting it
Mm.
on. And so, like,
Uh,
it was a program they were doing specifically for them. And I was like, oh, we don't have that with like the singles group. So, like, can I go? And I remember
can
they
I
made
go?
an exception. So I think, so there's another tip. Like, if something's happening that people didn't think to invite you to and you want to go, fine,
Ask.
like ask. Like the worst thing anybody can ever say to you is no. you
I
know
couldn't
um
agree more. Yeah, I think it's really it gets too complicated to worry too much about whether
like,
you
are they
should
gonna
ask
say
or if it's
yes?
okay
Yeah.
or yeah, I completely agree. And I I really strongly believe in the power of like understanding what you want and letting people know, because very often people want to help, and if you can make it so easy as to let them know how, they're like grateful to you for knowing it's so easy to just let you take this course.
No, it's so like it's funny because so Sean and I were at an event last night for our alumni board, and he wants his club to like come back to our law school. Like he wants his program to come back, res judicata. So we're gonna get a little bit nerdy. You know, so Professor Fullerton, if you're out there, we're plugging you here.
Please, yeah, please.
We heard you're like touring Asia right now. So if you just happen upon this, if somebody, this is our this is our announcement, talking about like just putting it out there, right? But
Absolutely,
he basically mentioned this to me, and then like I was like, oh, you know. And then he was like, I just wish there was somebody that I could get this like rolling at the law school again. And I was like, oh, you know, maybe Professor Fulton could do it because like she's a runner. And then like we were talking to the dean, and then it was like this whole thing. And he was, and that's exactly what you said, like share what you want, and the people will just show up, like you know. And I firmly believe that, like, and sometimes they don't show up right away. Like and I will say it's not always the people that you think. So be open to the packaging.
100%. And I think part of the job is telling enough people so that the helpers find you, or you find the helpers. Because I think, and I saw this in fundraising too, sometimes you send out an email to however many people, thousands of people, and you think in your head, you're like, I know these people are they're good, they're definitely going to donate. And then some people you don't expect very much from, and a lot of times you're really surprised. Some of the people you thought would do it disappear, they don't respond at all, and then some other people step up and they're like thanking you, and
for allowing them to actually be a part. No, it's so true. It's so true. And so like, you know, and guys, I know like we promised we were going to talk about like very specific things, but we don't plan these calls. We don't plan these conversations, and like that's what I love about it personally, because I actually believe that every single one of these so far, we have talked about what needed to be spoken about for the people who are going to need it, because there's so much noise out there, right? And most things that you watch about the markets, they spend so much time in the information you could care less about. And like most people just want to know, how can I thrive in this, right? And so part of finessing the market, I think, you know, one of the things that I keep hearing is, you know, really build relationships with people. You know, you have to build relationships with people. You have to check in. You know, you have to be willing to speak up. You have to be willing to advocate for yourself. You know, and make decisions for you. You know, I was on a program recently, and one of the women on the panel, she was talking about how you know, in the same way that you give other people your best yes, you have to give yourself your best yes too, right? And so that goes back to what Sean was talking about, like working those 80 to 90 hour weeks, you know, and kind of deciding, wait, like this isn't what I really want. Like, you know, I don't even like this job, you know. I don't even like these people. Like the money might be good, but like, you know,
it was not very good. It was terrible. It's
even worse.
It's amazing to me. It is unbelievable to me looking back on it. But I think you really, it seems so obvious, but you really just, I think the most important thing is to control the things that you can control, you know? And I think one of the things that have helped me a lot too are things as simple, though we tell ourselves a story that we don't have time, but like, you know, working out, meditating. I do in my best times, I do a gratitude journal. And I think if you can control your mindset, then you can see all the opportunity in the world, and not a lot about the day changes, but you walk down the street and you see opportunity everywhere. And if you don't do those things, if I don't do those things, I walk down the street, all I see are the obstacles. And it's like, all these people are in my way. I'm trying to walk up the subway steps and this guy's trying to like tackle me. Maybe Aubrey has had an experience like that recently. But it can be a very aggressive environment we're in, and there are real obstacles everywhere. But I think if we can control our mindset, we can also see that, there's all these opportunities. So that's been
solutions, opportunities.
Yeah.
No, I think that's so right. And so like build relationships, keep your mindset in check, right? Because at the end of the day, like there's this verse, as a man thinketh, so he is, right? So is he, is how it goes, right? And so like, what are you thinking about when you wake up? Like what are you meditating on? Like what's your first thought when something happens, right? I remember I had a friend years ago where she would always kind of be like, why do you always have to put a positive spin on everything? But like that was just kind of my bent, where like I feel like I can always see an exit, like no matter, like I don't care if you lock the door, put some chains, set it on fire, I'm getting out. And if I'm not getting out, like my God is getting in and getting me. Like that's just how and I have like biblical proof of that. Like that's possible. And so to me, it's like when I think about life, like, and that's not to say I don't get down, but what I've noticed with myself is like I was arguing with this person earlier today saying, oh, like, like, well, I don't know if I could serve a God that's just gonna be out here all willy-nilly treating me like he's Billy with a magnifying glass, and and I'm the ant in the sun, like, and the person responded to me and was kind of like, oh, don't be that way. And I was like, no, you're misreading me. Like, I'm not saying I'm gonna stop serving God. I'm saying I don't believe that's who God is, right? Because of all these other promises, right? And so to me, it was like, even in that like state where I was like, rah, like I went back into my, but like, like the God you're telling me about is this person, but like I don't like that version that you're talking about, because that doesn't sound like what I've been reading about. So like I want the real version, right? And I think that's how like we kind of have to get to the place where we're able to like shift our mindset, because like it could have gone, to me, like I think about that conversation and it could have gone, and now I don't believe God exists anymore, and I'm, and screw the world, right? But it went, but I'm gonna stand on this version of God, and I think that's so important, right? Because at the end of the day, it's the version of the life that we see and that we want that ultimately is what's gonna propel us forward, right? Like if I'm seeing a life that I don't want, I'm sorry, I'm not working hard towards that life. I'm just not doing it. I'm not wired to work hard for things I don't want. Just
yeah, exactly.
That's
and there
not,
won't usually be a reward for you having done that, right? I
yeah,
mean, what are you
I'm
trying
probably
to do?
just gonna like hate my life at the end. Like, so like I don't have goals for things I don't want, like you think about it, in 2008, a lot of people lost their homes, but a lot of people who got homes, they got it because they were told this was the American dream, right? So like a lot of people did everything they could, and they went and they invested more than they could afford into these properties. Like imagine paying $500K for a house is really only worth like $200K, like it just on day one. It was just a bad time, right? And I often think about the people who really didn't need a house. Like like I know like a lot of people flex like, now like, oh, I'm a single woman, but I own a house. But it's like, what I see when I see like just Aubria owning a house? I see Aubria cleaning the house, Aubria Aubria having a budget to pay to clean the house. Like all I see is responsibilities that I don't like. you know? And
Yeah,
so for
I think
me, that's not a dream. For me, it's like for me it feels like a trap. I'm like, can we like
yeah.
can I do like real estate funds? Like can I do that? Like I could invest in real estate that way, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's really, so that reminds me, Rich Dad Poor Dad is another book that I
hmm
think is really
That's
interesting,
one of
and
my
it kind of,
favorite books.
I think it's such an important concept, the idea between like things and investments, and
Mhm, mhm.
I think lifestyle creep is a dangerous thing because you'll never have enough if you're just always trying to do more and more and more and more.
Mhm, mhm.
But if you're getting these investments that start bringing in money for you, that can actually start to be pretty powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And then using like, I don't remember who said it, but one of these like finance gurus was basically kind of like, don't like, you shouldn't be spending your money to buy anything,
Hmm.
any liability. Like all of your liabilities should be bought with the money you're making from all the assets that you
I
that
think
you've
that was in. I
that
think
you've
that concept
invested
was in
in.
that book actually.
Was that
Yeah,
rich? Yeah, like was that rich
I
dad
think
poor
so.
dad? Yeah,
I think so.
and
I think he might even say not to buy your own house until you can use the funds from the investments to buy it.
yeah, and to me, like
Interesting.
that's the goal, because when you think about it, like you build equity in property, right? And so that's part of
Yeah.
that's part of the thing that we have to do as individuals. It's like, and why it's so important to build relationships, because if you can talk to somebody who knows a bit about real estate, who knows a bit about finance, who understands what's going on in the
Yeah.
market right now, um, and then like go and find a professional to help you. Like this is something like I have to say because I feel like everybody thinks they can do everything. Please don't go like trying to invest in the markets if you are not skilled in this. Okay, please hire a professional because it doesn't make sense. And don't invest money that you need next month. It seems like
Well,
really simple. Just
I
don't
think
do
that's
it.
right.
I th-
But I will also say, and not to be so
Yeah.
different than that, but I also think it's important to think of, like, at least for me, coming
Mhm.
from what I came from, I didn't think about
Mhm.
investment as something that I did. It wasn't for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think even if I think that having that financial literacy is super important. Maybe you shouldn't
Mhm.
invest if the timing's not right.
Yeah.
During COVID, I set up the account. I didn't put a ton of money into it because I needed that money to pay rent.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
learned what I needed to. I set up the account, and then when I had the money, I put it in. But I think
Yeah.
it is
exactly.
important to have that
Give
mindset
yourself
to know it is for
opportunity.
you, even if you don't have the money now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. It's like, but talk to a professional. Like, like if
Yeah, you have to
you
learn.
There's many
Yeah.
free
like to me,
services to learn too.
yeah,
Hmm.
Just
and
as
if you,
yeah,
and I
like you don't
found this out
need to pay
recently.
for it.
I found this out recently. Like, if
Hmm.
you're a small business owner and or somebody who's like in a pivot too, like you can actually go to like the Small Business Association and they have all kinds of like programming that's just available to you that you already pay for with your tax dollars. So like exploit all the free resources. Like
Yeah.
that's something, even on the job, like if you're working and you have access to like financial literacy courses, you have access to just a life coach, a therapist, a professional coach. Use all of the things that are available to you so you can grow and learn. If you're still in undergrad or you're in law, or you're in some grad school, use your career services, right? I know everybody complains about career services. I was like notorious for complaining about career services through and through in every academic institution I've ever been in. But but I complained because I was already in the job market and I know, like, for me, it was just not fast enough, right? But for somebody who doesn't really know, like, you're not really aware, like, use the help that's available to you until you can afford better help, until you can afford, the fancy schmancy guide to help you through it. And Sean raises a really important point. Please read books. They are probably one of the cheapest ways to learn right now.
Yeah, and I think really, I think for me it was so eye opening
Mm-hmm.
to start to think about that as something that
Yeah,
was for
Mancho.
me, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you both for coming to this. I have to say, like, I've definitely stayed on brand with with these lives, because they are definitely, like, we're all barely conscious. I think you can see us really struggling out here. But we are streaming, and we are streaming live and getting you this, like, awesome information. So I just want to special thanks to Sean Devine for making it here, because I know he got stuff to do. He has daddy duty, so really thankful for the time. Thank you, Monica. Monica has graced us before. You'll probably see Sean again later in the fall. He's just hearing this for the first time, um, you know. But thank you
Him on the
guys so
spot.
much for tuning in. And we'll put some of the key points in the comments. So, like, if you missed it, or you just kind of want to know what we talked about, I'll make sure I put some key points in the comments by tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.